off packing my duds. I'll see you later.
Just remember that honoring one's parents is still a pretty good idea. You're going to be a shock to her. I advise you to soften the blow. Give her time to get used to you. Remember that whatever she may have done, she's your mother.
Well, Mother. Hello. Mother, you're looking wonderfully well. Lisa told me you'd been ill, but
Lisa knows nothing about me. Step over there where I can see you. Turn around. Walk up and down. It's worse than Lisa led me to suppose. Much worse.
If you'd like me to go, Mother.
Don't go. I have things to say to you. Sit down. I've asked a number of the family to dinner tonight at 7:30.
Lisa told me you had. It's very nice of you, Mother.
There'll be Lloyd and Rosa, Hilary and Justine, Lisa and June, Mr. Livingston, Uncle Herbert.
Do you mean Elliot Livingston?
Yes. I shall be wearing my white lace gown tonight. I'd like you to wear your black and white foulard.
But I've lost over 25 pounds. It won't fit.
Oh, yes, it will. I've had Miss Till here for the last week. Hilda is just Lisa's size. We've had all your dresses fitted to her. I've asked Miss Till to stay late tonight, in case there may be any minor alterations necessary.
You've thought of everything, haven't you, Mother?
Wait a minute. There's something else I want to say to you. Now that you're cured of whatever ailed you and have come home to take up your duties as a daughter again, I've dismissed the last nurse. I've become used to having a room occupied on the same floor with me. And in view of my heart, I agree it is a wise precaution. You will occupy your father's room from now on. I had William move down all your things yesterday. Your furniture, books, and everything.
But, Mother, you had no right to move my things.
No right in my own house to move what I see fit. I'm not surprised you blush. I was in the room when William took the books from the shelves. And let me say that what we found hidden there was a very great shock to me. I can only hope that a shameful episode in your life is completely past.
If you'll excuse me, Mother.
I think if you wear your glasses tonight, you'll be less of a shock to the others. And take off whatever you've got on your face. As to your hair and eyebrows, you can say that often after a severe illness, one loses one's hair. But you're letting yours grow as quickly as possible.
Hello and welcome to Book versus Movie. This is a podcast where we read books that have been adapted into movies and then we try to decide which we like better, the book or the movie. I am Margot P. of ColoniaBook.com and this is my good friend and co-host, Margot D. of Brooklyn Fit Chick.
Hi, everyone.
We were getting very excited and starting to talk about the book and the movie. And then we're like, oh, no, wait, we have a podcast to do. So here we are. We're very excited.
We should record this.
We should actually really. 10 years we've been at this, folks. So if you are just tuning in, you love Bette Davis. We love Bette Davis. Maybe you love this author who we're going to be talking about today. Welcome, welcome. Yes, this is a podcast where here's the deal. We try to give you a new episode every single week. And so when we say book, we really mean any kind of literary source. So as long as it's a movie that we can easily find on a streaming platform, as long as it's been adapted from any kind of literary source, we will consider it. So not just a book like today's movie, but also like a short story, a novella, a magazine article, a play, a song, a poem. We've done it all. And even a Christmas card once that was adapted into a film. And you can look at our archives to see what that was. We are always looking for suggestions is what I'm getting at. So if you have suggestions or if you want to know if we've covered a particular book and movie, there's a few places where you can ask those. You can meet other listeners of this podcast and you can interact with us on the internet.
We have a basic Facebook page. Be sure to like it, but we're much more interactive in our Facebook group. So you type in Book VS Movie Podcast Group and ask to join. We really do just talk about books and movies there. It's a nice safe space on Facebook, especially in an election year. We do like those places where there's no yelling, basically. We're on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads. And at those places, you spell out book versus a movie. And then we have an old-timey email, book versus movie podcast, spell it all out at gmail.com. And if you would like some stickers, send us your address via email, and we will drop them in the mail for you.
And if you really enjoy the show, you want to give us a little more support, maybe you want some access to older episodes, some of the other many, I was trying to think of how many Bette Davis movies have we done because we are such super fans of Bette Davis. If you want to hear some of those, you can support us on Patreon.
Yes, Patreon. We've been doing the show for 10 years, so we basically have decided to put everything from 2021 and then previous to that on our Patreon wall. It's an app, but you also just listen to it on your laptop. Some of the episodes that we posted there recently are AI, A Face in the Crowd, Dangerous Liaisons, Heartburn, Almost Famous, and Dog Day Afternoon. That's there. We also have some free stuff there, especially the first couple of years or older episodes that you could check out. And we also put in clips there for that we play in the show. We have video clips that we include that if you sign up for free on Patreon, you can get access to those. But if you pay, yay, thank you so much for those of you who pay. It helps us with the books and the movies and just the costs of keeping the show together. And I want to say a special thank you to Christina and Lacey, who recently joined our Patreon page. Thank you so very much.
Wow, thank you. And I think, Margot, you said we also have a couple of new reviews.
Wherever you get your podcasts, you could leave us some stars and a review. That would be amazing. It helps us to find our people. That way they list us higher and blah, blah, blah. And I want to say thanks to Queen's Yankee Gal and Finder 001 who left us in Apple Podcasts 5-star reviews. Thank you so much for doing that. It's fantastic of you. And if you ever have an issue with Apple Podcasts, I have an issue with one of my other shows, just send us a message on our Facebook page and I'll look into it.
Oh, yes, we were just saying Mercury is in retrograde
Yes.
and I cannot wait for it to be over.
Not until November.
I know a lot of you think
comes back.
it's a lot of nonsense, but let me tell you, this year in particular, like every single Mercury retrograde I have had, it's like, really?
Yeah.
Seriously? This time I had in the same week, I got in the car to take my son to school and we had a flat tire. Had to get 4 new tires. Same week, discovered our toilet was leaking into our basement.
No.
Had to get the basement ceiling ripped open. And all that. I mean, it's just, and all kinds of like glitchy. I thought I sent that email. I remember pressing send and it never went through, all that kind of stuff. I've tried pretending like Mercury retrograde isn't a thing, and I've always lived to regret it. That's all I'm saying. We are very excited. Margot has never seen this movie. So if you're confused, we're both named Margot.
Right.
Me, Margot P. I am on the West Coast in San Diego. Margot D. Is in Brooklyn in New York. And so again, 10 years, folks.
Longtime friends.
Yeah, longtime friends. And we just decided to do this, because at the time we weren't reading very much, and we didn't have time to see a lot of movies. And we thought this would be a fun way to get back into the reading habit, which it certainly has done that. And it, be in touch with each other once a week, and so pleased and delighted that so many of you have decided to join us along the way. And if you've been with us for a while, all of this is to say, if you've been with us for a while, you know how much we love the Bette around here. And part of it is that, one, she's spectacular, of course, and underrated, of course. For as lauded as she is, I don't care. It's not enough.
It's not enough.
But if you look at her career, her in particular, she is one of these actors with a great eye for material and has starred in so many legendary adaptations. And this is one of the biggies.
Right.
Although you and I were relatively unfamiliar with this author, the public at the time would not have been. So we're talking about Oh, I'm so excited. We're talking about Now Voyager. Epic. Peak. No, I would say peak Betty, but peak everything. Everybody is peak Betty. And there's so many different Bettys. But this is peak wartime Betty. I'm going to go that. I'm going to say that. So many things that even today are just part of American pop culture that come from this film. Quotes, even memes. We even have memes from this movie. But it all starts with our author. Again, she's quite well known at the time. Today, we know her as the woman who wrote Now Voyager and also the woman who wrote Stella Dallas. But let's get into it. Her name is Olive Higgins Prouty.
She was born in, is it Worcester? Is that how you pronounce it? Massachusetts?
I believe it is Worcester.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's
and died in Brookline. I lived there briefly.
Margot lived in Brooklyn, and Margot lived in Massachusetts, went to college there. My brother lived in Massachusetts, and I also used to work for West Marine. We had a bunch of stores there. So there's some words that are pronounced differently there. That's just Massachusetts. You just have to, Massachusetts is going to Massachusetts. Anyway, Olive Higgins Prouty, she was part of the hoi polloi. There's a lot of old money and classy people in that area of Massachusetts where she's from. She was born in 1882, and she is a woman who had several mental health issues. She herself said she had a nervous breakdown, which is what they called it at the time in 1894, and it lasted for 2 years. She also had an issue where she lost 2 daughters. Where she was married young, and she lost after the death of both of her daughters. She went and had she had 2 of her kids of her 4 passed away, and she went into a sanitarium for that, and it was in Massachusetts, and I think it's the place where James Taylor also went. It's a pretty famous one, and it's the whole idea of psychology in the 40s and talking about it in movies is very unusual. This movie was filmed in 1942, and and the book came out in 1941. We're going into World War II. A lot of the movie stars that are men signed up to serve. And so there were a lot of films with women as the leads. Like, they were the ones that held up Hollywood at this time.
Mildred Pierce. I mean, yeah, but we wouldn't, I don't know that we would have had it if we didn't have these authors, just going into the war, like you're saying, who were writing books, writing these really great stories, again, like Mildred Pierce, that were featuring these really strong, three-dimensional, amazing female characters. One of the things about Olive is that one of the things that struck me, having never read her before, she was known for, again, Stella Dallas and this book, Now Voyager. But Now Voyager is part of a series that she wrote about an aristocratic Boston family. It was a series of 5 books about the Vale family, very much like her own family. Maybe because of her background, because she did come from a very aristocratic background, although it's in Boston, not in New York, but she reminded me a bit of Edith Wharton, who would have been somewhat her senior. And in terms of giving us, she comes a little bit later. She's about 20 years after Edith Wharton in terms of when she was born. And coming of age in the time of psychotherapy, of psychoanalysis, and all this coming into play, giving us even more of her character's inner lives, which I thought was really interesting. I've loved Stella Dallas, the movie. I've never read the book, but I was very impressed by the writing. It's super good, right?
Yeah, it's wonderful. I want to also just mention that she went to Smith College. She was a benefactor for many people. She helping them getting to the writing profession, especially women. And one of her most famous protege, Sylvia Plath.
I think that's accurate.
Yes,
Sylvia Plath. Yeah,
who was a little bit older than her, but also had gone through similar mental health issues. She wrote about Prouty in the Bell Jar.
In the Bell Jar, her novel.
Fascinating woman, but like Margot said, she's writing what she knows, which is just New England, wealthy patrician society. And here's a woman who just is a square peg in a round hole, and just doesn't want to do what everybody else thinks is important. I mean, she's very shy. The character Charlotte Vale, and we had Charlotte last week because we talked about Charlotte's Web, which is wild. So this week, her character is Charlotte, and this is the third in 5 novels about the Vale family, Vale, and I think Lisa her sister-in-law was the lead in a couple of the other stories. So this is Charlotte's story.
Oh, I see. Yes, because there's brothers. Ah, interesting. I didn't look into that too much. She lives to be 92.
Right.
And what really, another thing that kind of struck me, because I read the book before I kind of did any research on the author, and then learned about, like, wow, she's not only has she lived through an extraordinary amount of history, but personally, she's been through some stuff. She's been through some very serious tragedy, health issues, and survived, and then became a world famous author whose works were adapted into iconic, always make now Voyager is always on, like, so was Stella Dallas, always make lists of best of, ever in the history of cinema, and lived into the 1970s. Women's right to vote. I mean, all the things that she saw. But so much that she experienced before she ever became an author. Really, really impressive woman. She must have had quite a strong character herself, I think.
Yes, I agree. So let's get into this movie. I mean, it's this fascinating woman and this fascinating story. It's now Voyager is about Charlotte Vale, and she is what we would say a spinster. I'm a spinster, so I'm like, I totally don't take it as an insult.
She's a what is it? Childless cat lady.
She's the original childless cat lady. She's in her 30s. She has. She's the youngest, and by like a generation, she's like the
right. It's a big gap. So is it all brothers and then her, or is there another sister?
I think it's all brothers. But she's a gap kid.
It's a big gap. It's
a
big old gap. So one of the things that there's some differences between the book and the movie, although I think we can say that this film is a very faithful adaptation of the book, for sure. It's just differences in the way that the story is told.
Right, the order
for a variety of reasons. Yeah. So when the book opens, Charlotte has already undergone her glow up. She's on the cruise. If you're familiar with this movie, and you probably maybe you are, because again, it's one of these like Citizen Kane that like. So if you're familiar with the movie, in the book, she's already on the cruise ship. She's already beautiful and glamorous, and she's already on the cruise ship. And a lot of the book kind of goes back in time as Charlotte is remembering her life before her breakdown, the whole breakdown itself, her childhood. There's a lot of her flashbacks. And another thing that I think is it surprised me because I'm so familiar with the movie, is the book actually gives us, once she meets JD, we get some of his interior life as well. I was like, I see. So we get what his impression of Charlotte is, how his feelings for her are growing. I really appreciate that, because the one thing about the movie that it's a very melodramatic movie. Like, it's famously extremely melodramatic, but it's just deliciously so.
Yes.
But one of the things that always struck me is like about Jerry specifically. It's a little bit, I'm going to use the word cringy. Like, he's on this cruise ship. His marriage has kind of been on the rocks for a while. He meets this woman. He learns that she's recently had a breakdown, and he it seems like he sort of a little bit swoops in when he's extremely vulnerable. And
so you say there's a chance.
Yeah, exactly. Very that. But if you read the book, you get it's much meatier. You get much more of him being, not sure of how he feels, and it's much more complex of a character in the book than it is in the movie. And I was really surprised and pleasantly so. But basically it's the same beats. We have, she's on the cruise ship. She's remembering, what life was like as a spinster with her mother. And the mother is quite a she's practically a Disney villain.
It's funny because she's played by Gladys Cooper, who is a British actress in the movie, but we don't even know her first name. It's just Mrs. Henry Wendell Vale. This is just, we don't really know.
Yeah.
But
maybe in the other books it says, but by this point she is Mrs. Vale and only Mrs. Vale, and whoever you are, even her children practically call her Mrs. Vale.
She's a widow. The boys are all older and married and have kids. Charlotte is stuck at home taking care of her mother, and her mother makes a point of basically destroying the girl's self-confidence so that she grows up completely insecure and mousy and afraid. And the mother keeps her that way. And this is her mother's way of just having somebody around her. She makes it clear, I didn't want a kid. You were not even a happy surprise. You were just a surprise, and you put a wrench in things.
You were a burden.
Yes.
And now you must pay.
And this is how you pay me back.
Oh, my.
You give me your youth, basically.
Seriously. She's like a succubus. And another thing that I really enjoyed about the book, it's so, you guys just read it.
Get the audiobook. That's what I got. It's fantastic.
I don't know why we don't know more about this author. She was extremely popular at the time, but then after the war, I think just maybe not. It just, people kind of didn't read, didn't talk about her so much. Or maybe they thought of her too much as a popular author, and that might have been the issue, as opposed to a literary sort of like a Wharton figure. Another thing that I really enjoyed in the book, the movie it's very brief. There's a brief flashback where Charlotte is talking to Dr. Jackwith about how when she was 17 years old, and we'll get to the absolute brilliance of Betty. I totally believe that she's 17. She's 30 something. She's 34 when they make this film, and she's playing 17, and I 100% believe it. Anyway, so she's recounting how once on a cruise, she had this fling with an officer on the ship, and she's 17. So they're like, we'll get married. And the mom's like, no, I don't think so. She steps in, she puts a stop to it. But in the book, it's a much more developed story of this romance in her youth, that she really felt hard for this guy, basically because he was nice to her, and he's enjoying the fling, but eventually he gets married to somebody else, and he really didn't care about her that much. And you kind of think well, it's kind of good the mom stepped in, because this would not have gone well.
No,
he was not going to treat her well.
It's one-sided. He's probably your first boyfriend. He's her first lover.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. So she's a vulnerable person. Being treated nicely by somebody who says they have an interest in you and what you care about. I mean, that was like catnip for her. Her mother puts the kibosh on that, and she lives at home, and her mother makes her eat a very starchy diet. So she's heavier than she wants to be. Doesn't let her wear fashionable clothes. She keeps her,
forces her to wear glasses that we later learned she never needed.
Right. I mean,
they don't have a prescription.
She doesn't want her dating. She doesn't want her finding someone great and moving on. And she's using the money that the father left the mother and making it very clear to her, you can have this, but you have to sleep on the same floor with me. You have to wear these shoes that I want. You can, and everybody treats her like crap.
Everything. I mean, she dictates what this woman is in her 30s, okay?
Right.
What she wears, what she reads, who she sees, where she goes, what she eats. I mean, every single choice. And the mom is like, yeah, you live in my house. I make all your choices. That's how it is. And the mother is very used to using her money to get what she wants, to make people do what she wants them to do. I don't quite know. It's not entirely clear. Maybe it is in some of the other novels, how that it's just barely alluded to, how she controls the brothers with the money. But there is a hint of that, much more than in the movie.
Maybe in the other books?
In the book.
I haven't read the other books, so I'm assuming there has to be. Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
We must get a glimpse of how this is the third book in the series, we should say, of 5.
Mm-hmm.
of this woman. It is just like, I can't even imagine like being in your 30s and being treated like a toddler, essentially.
And everyone's going along with it. Nobody intervenes. Nobody says, hey, don't talk to her that way. Why don't we take her to a party and have her meet some friends and have her, like, her mother doesn't want that. And all of them are also dependent on the money. So they also just...
Everybody is. Everyone is dependent on this mother.
Right. Mm-hmm. So even her sister-in-law who loves her, but even is a little, like, talks down to her, but her niece, like... makes fun of her. Nobody respects her. Everyone just treats her like she's some little, like you said, a toddler, like an oversized toddler. And she's upset.
But she has one sister-in-law. She has one brother who has died, and his widow is the only person in Charlotte's life who sees her and has any kind of compassion for her and worries about her. And it's her Lisa who gets in touch with Dr. Jackwith and is like, I'm really worried about my sister-in-law. I think she might be having a nervous breakdown. Like, she's really losing her grip, and who could possibly, this is not a sustainable state that she's living in, right? In the book, I will say, we get a lot more examples of the mother's cruelty in the book than we do in the movie. And one of them is that in the book, kind of near the end of the book, I should say, Lisa, the sister-in-law, who the only one who's ever been nice to Charlotte, she remarries. She eventually remarries. She's been widowed for a very long time. And she's still very young and beautiful. I forget what the circumstances of her first husband's death were. But anyway, perfectly within her right to remarry. And she gets married, a very nice guy, treats her really well. She's very happy. She has another child. So she's got the older daughter, June, who's kind of a teenager. She's snarky. But then she has a heart too. But then Lisa eventually has at least one other child with this second husband. And we learn near the end of the book that when Charlotte's mother dies and she leaves all of her, spoiler alert, we're going to spoil everything. Charlotte's mother dies and leaves everything to Charlotte. And we'll talk about the circumstances of that. She leaves Lisa nothing and Lisa's child nothing, even though, I mean,
they were taking care of her too. Yeah.
Yeah. She's like, yeah, no, they're not related by blood. So nothing for you. And Charlotte's like, no, you're going to get, so Charlotte steps in and makes sure that Lisa gets exactly what all of her other siblings, as the widow of her brother, that she gets his share of, that he would have been left. So yeah, that's a whole sub story that's like not in the movie at all. But basically, I mean, so she has her nervous breakdown. She goes to this sanitarium with Dr. Jackwith. Dr. Jackwith is absolutely this like angel character. He's so sensible. He's so kind. He's not full of like, tell me about your mother. He's not full of mumbo jumbo, doesn't make her sit on a sofa. He just wants to equip her with the skills that she needs to survive as an adult, as someone who has a mother like this. And it's really about building up her self-esteem and, helping her learn how to interact with people because she's not been allowed to do that. And part of her education, I guess is what I'm going to call it, is that Lisa and Dr. Jackwith agreed that they're going to have, before they send her home into the lion's den and have to deal with her mom, they're going to send her on a cruise. Now, in the book, the cruise is to Europe.
Right.
Because the book was probably written sometime in the end of the 30s, before Europe had erupted into war. So they're going on, that's what you would do. You would take you would do the grand tour, you would do a European cruise. She had been to Europe multiple times with her mother. So it's not like it's not like she's never seen Europe before. It's just go on the cruise to talk to people and meet people. And that is where she meets Jerry, who's on the cruise for business, I think, right? He's only on it for like a leg of the cruise, right?
We meet Jerry, and Jerry's a very nice guy. I mean, he's married and has kids. He also has a situation where his youngest daughter is treated badly or not very well by his wife, and he kind of recognizes that. His wife seems to be somebody that's just not happy and kind of spreads that around as well. So he's working a job he doesn't really want to do, but he's trying to create this lifestyle for her. And so he's on this trip alone, and she's there alone. And doesn't she take over does she take over this Duchamp person on this trip, or is that a separate part
what
of the
happens,
trip?
the way that the cruise comes about is that Lisa has a friend, and who Charlotte knows. Lisa has a friend who was supposed to take this cruise, and for some reason she wasn't able to go at the last minute. And that gives Lisa the idea like, oh, this would be perfect for Charlotte to go on this cruise. That way it doesn't go to waste, and it would give her a chance to practice, what
skills.
she's been learning, her skills, and get them honed up with strangers who she's never going to see again. Very low risk for Charlotte. And also it just would be good for her to get away on her own. And Dr. Jackwith is like, oh, you're absolutely right. This is perfect. Great idea. But because it all happened so last minute, the original woman, Miss Beauchamp, whatever, I'm so bad at French, is still on the passenger list. There wasn't any time to update the passenger list. And so everyone greets her as Mrs. Beauchamp. Everyone, all the passengers call her that. And Charlotte is so timid, and she's very new at peopling, so she doesn't have the chutzpah yet to be like, actually, that's not my name.
No, and it gets to a point sometimes where it's too much time has gone by to like. It's a very Larry David kind of moment. Like it's that kind of.
Like, I guess that's who I am now.
That's who I am with this trip. I mean, I'm also just playing this game. I'll role play. So they're meant to be like platonic friends, like companions for this she So they get to talking, and he's very gentle with her and very kind. And she helps him buy gifts for his daughter, and he helps her by helping her just getting around and meeting people and dancing on the dance floor and playing shuffleboard.
He's very kindly, and he knows her deal.
Right.
She's up front with him about like, okay, listen, she shows him a picture of like her right before her breakdown, and it explains the whole thing. So he's all up on it. So he's not under any false impressions here whatsoever. And yeah, in the book, like I say, especially because you get his inner dialogue and his inner impressions of Charlotte. So you see what a really genuinely good guy he is. It's not like in the movie where you're like, what's this guy's deal? Like, what? He's awfully into her all of a sudden. In the book, there's a whole, inner life that he has that we're privy to. Because he also, in his own way, has been kind of beaten down by life. His passion is architecture, but he has not been pursuing it to please his wife. He's been pursuing I forget, like some kind of financial, business wheeler dealer. So he's not being what he wants to be, which is an architect, and plus all the other stuff that's going on at home for him. Anyway, so yeah, and also because she's traveling alone and he's traveling alone, the ship folk organizers are like, oh, do you mind sharing this table at dinner? Do you mind sharing this car during the tour when we go ashore? So that the ship kind of puts them together over and over again, and they develop a real friendship.
Yeah, they become friends, and they're traveling together. And one of the things is that she gets this new wardrobe because this woman has this gorgeous wardrobe, and the woman like instructs her what to wear together. So it's all of this is like this a part of her makeover, and so they fall in love while they're on this trip together, but they also realize they can't go anywhere with this. I mean, he's married, and so they part, and then she comes back home. And when she comes back home, her mother's really upset because she's in with this brand new wardrobe and this new confidence, and she's carrying herself.
And no glasses.
No glasses, and she's wearing fancy shoes, and she's wearing, a little cleavage. She's not covering everything up, and she's cleaned up her hair. She cleaned up her eyebrows. It's a big thing about the eyebrows, too. Like, she got to do all of that stuff to make her...
We're very concerned about the eyebrows, which makes me wonder if our author, had a unibrow situation.
Unibrow issue? which I used to have. I've done so much waxing and plucking. It finally went away for me, but it also doesn't grow back. So just don't overpluck is my whole thing. So she's home, and the family is noticing that she has this new confidence, but the mother really notices, and the mother's not happy about it. So the mother wants to stamp it down. So she wants her to not stay in her bedroom anymore, to stay in a room on the same floor as the mother, to wear the dowdy clothes, to fire the nurse and be her nurse from now on, like bedpans.
The
and
mother
everything.
is tightening all the grips at once. She's like, okay, not this, not that. You're eating this. Like all in the first 5 minutes that Charlotte has arrived at home.
Right.
Mom is like putting her foot down and laying down the law right away.
And Charlotte is really fighting back because she, like we said, she's learning these new skills, but it's hard. It's tricky. It's upsetting. And at one point, her mother flings herself down a flight of stairs to really like lay it into her. Like, you're going to take care of me. I'm going to be helpless, and you're going to look like a creep.
Now I can't walk. What you going to do now?
Yeah. You and your new fancy shoes, you without your glasses. How are you going to be helpful now? And she's doing the best she can with it, but she's struggling, and she's trying to reach out to new friends that she's made, and she's still under these insecurities. So she reaches out to her doctor, and they start talking, and does she go back to visit him, or she just goes back to
something in the book and in the movie that it hadn't really struck me before. Even because, like I said, it's in the movie too, but it's more in the book. That, to her credit, man, Charlotte is going back into a very treacherous situation, and everybody has told her, and she knows that it's going to be. She knows what she's getting into, and nevertheless, the mom's been like resting up to just really make it hard. I'm going to I will fling. If I break my spine, flinging myself down, that's fine. It's worth it. And Charlotte, to her credit, there are 2 points after she returns home. This is one of them. 2 points where, she's like, I don't know if I can handle this. What does she do? She reaches out for help. She contacts the doctor. She's like, even if I could, the first one with the mom flinging down the stairs, she's like, even if I could just get him on the phone, that would, she's
desperate.
She's desperate, but she doesn't just revert. She doesn't crumble. She's like, no, I have tools and available to me and a system. I'm going to use my tools and my system. And so she does. And that kind of gives her some resolve. She goes back and she makes smart choices. She hires the nurse back. She's helping, yes, but she's not helping completely. She's like, you actually need a professional nurse, Mom. I mean, I can't heal your broken ankle. Sorry. Yeah. You're going to have an actual nurse. And, joke's on you, Mom. So Charlotte is setting boundaries, but not boundaries so much that the mom is totally sideswiped. But, mom's going to mom. And, she keeps trying. She's like, well, what about this? What about that? What if I cut you off completely? What if I do da?
It's very manipulative. And she's
so manipulative.
And it's like Charlotte doesn't have, she has these new skills to deal with her mother in this situation, but it's not like she knows how to type or she has a college degree.
Or she's done anything on her own.
Right. So she's
ever, except
scary.
Take a cruise. Yeah. And she knows this. But there's this key moment in the book and in the movie where the mom's like really laying in, like, you're going to have nothing. You do just your money's not going to go far. And not only are you going to be poor, you're going to disgrace our family because you're going to be poor. And Charlotte suddenly goes, I'm not afraid of you.
Yeah.
And
you and what
you
army?
Keep talking. Yeah, exactly. She's like, yeah, you know what? I think I'll be fine.
Yeah.
And I don't care about your, reputation of the family. Like, you don't care about how you treat me. Like, you don't think that's going to bring disgrace. So, I don't care anymore, Mom. It's fine. Do your worst. This is, you've made it very clear you never wanted me. And it's this great line in the book and in the movie that it was, you never wanted me. I didn't ask to be born. It was a calamity on both sides. And the mom who we've seen throw herself down the stairs to get back at her daughter. The mom like heaves this great noise and like collapses. And Charlotte, as we all would, is like, really? I told, like, will you stop? But no, turns out
She dies.
she dies.
And Charlotte feels terrible. She thinks it's her fault.
She feels awful because she does love her mother. And again, she knows this. She's had this Dr. Jackwith there with her, helping her untangle all of this. So she's understanding, but she didn't want this to happen. She was just trying to have a relationship with healthy boundaries is all. Not the one unbreakable boundary of death. And so Charlotte realizes like, oh my gosh, I'm spinning out. I need to go back to the sanitarium. So she sees that needs help. She reaches out for the help that she needs. And I just think that's such an amazing message about this book, because this is very early days of mental health care. Even the mother, like when she hears about the place is called Cascade, the sanitarium.
Nice. It's in Vermont.
She's like, oh, so it's one of those terrible places with the barbed wire fence and yowling. She's terrible because this is the antiquated view of trying to take care of one's mental health. So, I was just really, really kind of blown away by that. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
The novel could have just been like, oh, she spins out, and now it's Grey Gardens, it's seriously, but it's not that. She's like, okay, I had skills. They only took me so far. I'm going to need some extra help here. And she goes to Cascade. While she's there, and this is her second time around, so she's not starting from scratch. But while she's there, she recognizes among the children who are there as patients, Jerry's daughter, because when Jerry was confiding in her about the trouble that his daughter was having, she was like, oh, well, I went to this wonderful place, Cascade, and Dr. Jackwith, I can't even tell you what he's done for me. Cannot recommend him enough. So Jerry took her advice and sent his daughter there. So now she's like, oh, this is great. I'm good. I'm glad that she's getting help, but this might not be good for my, my journey back.
Puts a wrench in things.
And again, to her credit, she develops a relationship with Tina, but she is completely open and honest with Dr. Jackwith. Like, okay, look, here's the deal. I don't know if Tina's dad told you what was up with us. Here's what was up with us. She tells him everything. So everything's out in the open. She is not keeping secrets. And so Dr. Jackwith, because of that, Dr. Jackwith's like, okay, we'll keep an eye on this relationship with Tina. And turns out that Charlotte is very good for Tina because she can relate to her. They have a lot in common. But Charlotte now has skills and tools that she can help Tina, at a much earlier point in the road than she herself received help. And to the point that Tina goes home to live with Charlotte. Charlotte now is a rich woman with a big empty house in Massachusetts. Why not have a ward, that she can look after? They have this wonderful relationship, and Dr. Jackwith is keeping a very close eye on all of it. And of course, eventually Tina's dad shows up. Because he should, frankly, your daughter's going to go. Yeah, you actually pick up the parenting here, Jerry. And he sees that Tina's doing amazing. And he's so happy. He's like, oh, she's great. I'll take her home now. Like, what? Now you swoop in. But it's all been a test because Dr. Jackwith has told Charlotte, like, if you can manage to handle a visit from Jerry, who you've told me is the love of your life, but that you can't be together. If you can handle him coming and going and visiting Tina, then you might be okay with this situation. Like, basically you have to choose. Are you going to have a relationship with Jerry that, let's face it, isn't going to really go anywhere because he's not divorcing his wife? Or are you going to have a relationship with Tina, which is really, you know, you guys are really attached to each other now. And she chooses Tina, which as she should.
Right.
As she should. And Jerry, who selfishly at first is like, oh, she's great, let's go. He sees that is the best thing, is for Tina to stay there as well. And he realizes, like, we're going to have a different kind of relationship now. And the book ends with the wonderful, wonderful line, why ask for the moon when we have the stars? And the dialogue, all the best dialogue from the book is in this movie. So if you are a fan of this movie, you will really, really enjoy reading this book. And it's surprising enough because, as we said, the timeline and the way that it's presented, the story is different. She's, like I said, it opens that she's on the cruise line. There's a lot of back and forth as she has flashbacks. And also she's in Europe. She is not. That's why the driver, when they get in the car accident, that's why his name is Giuseppe. Why we kept it Giuseppe in the movie, I do not know.
We'll get to his scene.
We'll get to his scene. It's a little weird, but in the book, I think they're in Italy, and
they're in Naples.
Therefore, your driver would be called Giuseppe.
And speak with an Italian accent.
And speak with an Italian
all
accent.
These Latin-based languages. Yeah. It's and there's a thing where she gets back together with the first boyfriend. His wife dies, and then they start dating.
That's also in the book,
right?
Because now she's got more confidence, and so and also, again, limited options for a woman in her position. You know, she can either live as her mother's servant for the rest of her life, or take her only viable way out, which is marriage. And you know, she doesn't love him, but he's a nice guy. She likes him very much. He seems to be in love with her. And the mother approves, actually, because he's from an even swankier family in Boston. So she's going along with it. So it all seems good. But Charlotte realizes, because she's had a lot of growth, that, you know what, this isn't fair to him for me to marry him when I don't have the feelings that he has for me. So she breaks it off.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
I just really admire this character so much. Really,
I related to her.
reading.
I related to her, and I really I felt for her, and it's a wonderful story and a different story, and we don't get enough of them, and I just super enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So
it's great.
Should we talk about this movie?
Oh boy.
I'll play the trailer, and then we will now talk about Now Voyager.
Want to be born. You didn't want me to be born either. It was a calamity on both sides. What is the feminine for your word? That's what I am. I knew you were married, and I walked right in with my eyes wide open. I'm immune to happiness.
You weren't immune that night on the mountain.
Do you call that happiness?
My darling, you are crying.
These are only tears of gratitude.
Don't talk like that.
You see, no one ever called me darling before. Journal of Miss Charlotte Vale. Whole secret life hidden up here behind a locked door.
It's worse than Lisa led me to suppose. Much worse. I can only hope that a shameful episode of your life is completely past. Come out at once. Go to your cabin.
I don't care. I'm glad.
I can't work in the dark when there's a child in the picture.
I'll tell you everything.
Betty Davis is our star. I mean, what do we need to say?
What did we say? Well, I mean, come on.
She plays.
Except that, she's 30. Like I said, she's in her, she's like 34, I think, when she makes this, something like that.
She was born in 1908, and this film's in 42. So that's math. I don't math.
34.
Yeah.
So she's the same character. She's the same age as the character, which is great. But when we meet her, Betty Davis was not afraid of a little effects makeup. This we know.
Throughout her career, she's not afraid. She thinks about everything about a character. She's also the fashions in this movie are
okay. I mean, literally, y'all, if you just have it on with the sound down, and all of the, I mean, not just hers are breathtaking. I mean, just like you have to pause it. I got to pause this and look at this a little closely for a little bit. But everyone, I love all the mother's costumes. Like the mother looks incredible when she dresses up for the party and she's got this like turn of the century looking gown, but it is spectacular. It just, okay, let's talk about our cast though. So we've got Bette Davis, Natch. Again, like Margot said, this is during the war. Like this is really during the war. Europe is on fire. So a lot of our American leading men are not around. So we have a slightly more international cast.
We have Paul Henreid as Jeremiah Jerry DeVoe Durrance, J.D. Durrance. Claude Rains as Dr. Jackwith. He was her favorite co-star. Betty, I saw an interview she did.
He's wonderful.
With, who am I thinking of?
Dick Cavett?
Yes, Dick Cavett. And Betty Davis with her dark glasses and her cigarette and beret. She's wearing a beret. She's just so great.
Okay, can we just say, you just reminded me. So Betty Davis, for those of you who are not alive yet when she passed, one of the things Betty Davis was famous for was smoking. And this movie has it in spades. Like, if this were actual life today, but this is how you and I lived in the 1970s when it was still the amount of cigarette smoke that was around in every space that you moved in all the time.
When did the Surgeon General's report come out? Was that in the 60s?
Yeah, it was, but it still continued after it came out.
Oh, yeah.
It still had the warning. Yeah. But we, like, you and I still grew up, there were cigarette billboards and everywhere.
Even in the 90s. Because I moved to New York, I was a smoker.
Yes. Our generation was still a very smoky generation.
Yes.
So Bette Davis. So anyway, so now Voyager, like if you watch it and you imagine like somebody blowing cigarette smoke right in your face.
As flirting?
Right. And it's flirting. Right. Like I would be so mad if somebody did that to me. I would not.
Your breath stinks.
It's like the sexiest thing, but ugh. Anyway.
It was in the book too.
Yeah, it's in the book too. The cigarette thing is in the book. Bette Davis famously was a smoker's smoker. Like any interview you see with that woman, she is smoking. She later in life had cancer. She had breast cancer, which is ultimately what she died from. She lived a very long time, we should say. She had cancer. Then she had multiple strokes. And by all accounts, pretty much right up to the end of her life, Miss Davis smoked approximately 100 cigarettes a day.
Which is something.
What? That is
that's
a job.
It's.
I think so.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I used to be a smoker. She also, I learned because there was a great YouTube channel that's all about fashion in Hollywood, and she famously never wore a bra because the way bras were then, they had the wires in them, and she thought the wires gave you breast cancer. So she refused to wear. I know, and it's like, girl, just put the cigarettes down. I mean, that's what.
Yeah.
Yes, but so they had to make her clothes. They had to put in bras in her because she had bazoombas.
They would build them in, yes.
Yeah, so that to support her. Let's go through this. So Gladys Cooper as her mother.
Okay. Oh,
so good and scary.
It's such a performance. She's so frightening.
What are you doing in this room?
I'm going to sleep here.
Here we go.
Yes, ma'am.
Didn't you understand I wished someone to sleep on the same floor with me?
We can get one of the maids, Mother, or perhaps we can get the nurse back.
We? So long as I pay the bills, I'm running this house. Please remember you're a guest, Charlotte.
Well, if I am one, then please treat me like one, Mother. Your guest prefers to sleep in this room, if you don't mind.
This is no time for humor. As it so happens, I do mind. Where did these flowers come from?
From New York.
Who sent them?
I've forgotten the name of the florist. I think it's on the box.
I've seen it. I had the box brought to me first. You know perfectly well what I mean. What person sent the flowers?
There wasn't any card.
In other words, you don't intend to tell me.
Mother, I don't want to be disagreeable or unkind. I've come home to live with you again here in the same house. But it can't be in the same way. I've been living my own life, making my own decisions for a long while now. It's impossible to go back to being treated like a child again. I don't think I'll do anything of importance that will displease you. But Mother, from now on, you must give me complete freedom, including deciding what I wear, where I sleep, what I read.
Where did you get that dress?
Lisa and I bought it in New York today.
It's outrageous. Where's the black and white foulard?
I gave it to Miss Till. She was so grateful. Mother, please be fair and meet me halfway.
They told me before you were born that my recompense for having a late child was the comfort the child would be to me in my old age, especially if she was a girl. And on your first day home after 6 months' absence, you behave like this.
Mother, wait for me and I'll go down with you.
Thank you. I prefer to go down alone.
And like when she throws herself down the stairs, it's just delicious. Gladys Cooper, I don't know, she's like 20 years older, I think, than Bette. She's aged up in this film. She doesn't look quite that old in real life. But Gladys Cooper in her youth was quite the bohemian. You know, she was a model. She was a model, and she was sort of like a pinup girl during World War I. And if you look her up online, you will see some extremely sexy photos of young Gladys Cooper, who was gorgeous. But she was on stage. She had a very, very long and prolific career, but obviously extremely talented because, I mean, her just like, when her fingers are drumming on the bedpost.
She's angry.
So
She's so angry in that moment.
And yet her face is just like granite. Oh my gosh, she's so good.
And we should say that Paul Henreid and Claude Rains, they are in Casablanca right after they make this movie, which we talked about in the past because it's based on a play. Bonita Granville is June Vale. She's cute as a button.
She's great.
John Loder as Elliot Livingston is really good. Ilka Chase as Lisa Vale, and she also looks glamorous. I mean, she's
very glamorous,
very chic.
A very pivotal character in the story.
Lee Patrick is Deb McIntyre. Franklin Pangborn is Mr. Thompson. Catherine Alexander is Miss Trask. James Rennie as Frank McIntyre. Mary Wicks, who's an amazing character actress, was in a million things.
Mary Wicks. This is one of her. Oh, you've seen her. We know you've seen her.
Yeah. And a million cartoons too.
She's
a lot of animated.
Absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, voice actor. Yes, she was the what do you call the physical model for the character of Cruella de Vil. She's very good, physical comedian, extremely graceful actually, and really good at physical acting. And this is a very early film role for her, and she's already Mary Wicks. You just love her instantly as the nurse. The nurse character of Dora is wonderful in the book too, and
she's a riot.
I don't know that I would have pictured her as Mary Wicks, but Mary Wicks is just like she's not taking any crap, but she's gentle and sweet. And
she calls her the baby. She calls the mom. She calls her the baby that she's taking care of.
Queen Elizabeth. Okay, Queen Elizabeth.
I mean, really, it's great. And then we should say Janice Wilson is Tina, who's and she's not credited. I don't understand.
How do you not credit this child?
I don't know, but she and Bette Davis had a really good relationship. They
really have wonderful chemistry together. And they have a whole, I mean, I'm going to say at least as long as her section with Jerry is her section with Tina.
Tell me, what's the matter? I'm ugly and mean, and nobody likes me.
Tina, you?
I'm not pretty in the least. You know I'm not.
Well, whoever wants that kind of prettiness, Tina? There's something else you can have if you earn it. A kind of beauty.
What kind?
Something that has nothing to do with your face. A light that shines from inside you because you're a nice person. Think about it. Someday you'll know I'm right.
Will they like me then?
Who are they?
Everybody. All the kids at school, Miss Trask and the nurses and the doctors. Oh, there must be something awfully wrong with me.
Do you like them, Tina? The kids at school and Miss Trask and the nurses and the doctors?
No, I hate them.
Well, that's something else you've got to grow up with. If you want people to like you, you've got to like people. That's why Miss Trask asked you to cooperate. And that's what Dr. Jackwith means when he tells you to play the game.
I bet you're only fooling me.
You try it and see. In the meantime, if it'll help you any, I like you. I think you're very pretty. Very sweet. All right?
All right. Why are you so good to me?
Because somebody was good to me once when I needed somebody. Now go to sleep. Close your eyes and let your muscles go all limp. That's better. I'll tell you a story. Once upon a time, there was a little girl who was afraid. A little girl, Tina, who was afraid because she thought she was alone.
I love those scenes of her with Tina.
They're great.
They're great. They're great.
You know, I was an anxious kid. I would have loved to have had somebody like her.
Doesn't talk down to her.
Doesn't talk down, and there's no emotional manipulation going on. It's just somebody who just completely cares about her and wants to do well by her. It opens, speaking of fashion, and Bette Davis wanted to gain more weight and do all the, like we said, she's very transformative with the outside as well as the inside. And it's very easy to say, like, Bette Davis, who's so beautiful and striking, to play a plain, homely person. And there's that old adage, like, oh, just put glasses on her and a frumpy dress. Yeah. But there's so much more that has to happen. And Bette Davis is so believable. She's believable as 17. And perky.
I mean, she truly is. And they're very clever. Like, they're not like zooming in on her face or anything, but just like the thing in this movie with Bette Davis, just like her physicality in each, because we see many different Bette Davises here. We see her at 17 and she's moving like a 17-year-old and she's awkward in some ways, you know, and then we see her as the spinster aunt with the glasses and the unibrow, and she's kind of hunched over in her sensible shoes and she's kind of shrinking to make herself smaller all over the place. And then we see her, you know, when she first arrives on the cruise, and there was a scene that they shot of Charlotte undergoing her makeover, of like being in the spa and like having her eyebrows plucked and all of that. But then they decided, like, no, it's better to have the big reveal where she steps down. And again, this is not in the book at all, the way that this is done. So we see that, like, she's glammed up, but she's still very uncomfortable. This is really her first time dealing with actual people in the world. And then as the film progresses, you see her become more confident, just more physically occupying her body. And then by the end, like when she's with Charlotte, she's just she's very free, and they're running around in camping, and she has this complete evolution just in her physical performance in this film that alone deserves an Oscar, let alone like all of the amazing dialogue. And just I can't even do the Bette Davis voice.
No.
Of every family has one, and it just what a dump.
Yes, what a dump.
But this is not what a dump, because she's very, very aristocratic, and that's the one thing, that's the kind of through thing of this character vocally, is that she always was an aristocrat. She's raised that way, and that's just who she is. She grew up in society, so she's never pretending to be somebody else in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what a performance! Amazing. I totally buy that she's 17.
I buy that. I buy that she's 34 and frumpy and scared. We meet Claude Rains, and he shows up at the house, and and the mother is like, "Who are you? What do you want? You're an interloper." And and they're bossing around Charlotte to get the tea and everything. And Charlotte is just like hanging on by a thread. She's not.
Yeah.
The poor thing is just like is crushing under this.
Well, it's as I said, isn't it? Just nonsense.
She is most seriously ill.
Charlotte is?
Thanks to you.
Did you say?
My dear Mrs. Vale, if you had deliberately and maliciously planned to destroy your daughter's life, you couldn't have done it more completely.
How? By having exercised a mother's rights?
A mother's rights, twaddle. A child has rights. A person has rights. To discover her own mistakes, to make her own way, to grow and blossom in her own particular soil.
Are we getting into botany, Doctor? Are we flowers?
Hello, William. Gloomy William.
Good afternoon.
I've been thinking, you should get yourself a top piece. One like Mrs. Vincent Adams has put on her Charles.
It's a project worth considering. I myself have been worried.
Black, I think, or, maybe red. Anyway, we'll think about it. Oh, hello, Aunt Charlotte.
Hello, June.
You look ravishing. New dress? No, June. Well, anyway, it's devastating. Aunt Charlotte, do you think even at our age we should wear our skirts so short?
June, mind your manners.
Hello, Grandma.
Why are you always late?
I'm sorry.
Charlotte, will you pour tea?
Hello, dear. Will you have tea with us?
Tea? I'm heading for cocktails later. Oh. Who's this?
This is Dr. Jackworth.
And I'm June. You've heard about us, June and December.
My infant.
What's that? Oh, don't tell me Charlotte gave it to you.
June.
One of her own precious private? Why, Aunt Charlotte, fess up a romance. Isn't this something to be discussed with the family?
June, will you please?
What's this? A hangover, I believe it is. Aunt Charlotte's got the shakes.
Go on, torture me. Go on, torture me. You like making fun of me, don't you? You think it's fun making fun of me, don't you?
Nice work, infant.
I didn't mean... We've always ragged Aunt Charlotte. It was just a game.
A nervous breakdown. No member of the Vale family has ever had a nervous breakdown.
Well, there's one having one now.
Says to her, "Hey, why don't you show me around your house? Show me what, And so he is just speaking to her, talking to her, and then he sees her room, and he's observant. He realizes there's little things that she makes, like she's into crafting and creating, and that she's also a secret smoker. He could see where she's stashing her cigarettes because her mother doesn't want her to smoke.
Okay, so look, this is how smoke saturated the world was in these days. Like today, if somebody there's no such thing as secret smoking, because you would immediately walk in and be like, somebody's been smoking in here.
Yeah.
You would immediately know. But in those days, I guarantee you that whole house smelled like cigarette smoke. Probably her brothers, walking around smoking. And so
my grandparents' house, that's all you smelled.
Oh, absolutely. And it was like getting the carpet and the upholstery. Oh. So if somebody could in those days sneak a cigarette, because it would just blend in with all of the other cigarette smell going on. Nowadays, we look at that and we're like, really? But no, really, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, she's sneaking smoking, and he convinces her to go to the sanitarium, and she starts to come alive there. And within a few weeks or few months, Lisa comes in to check on her and to see how she's doing, and she's lost the weight, and she's really into knitting, and she's into crafts, and she's gaining her confidence slowly but surely. And this is when the doctor's like, you're ready to go home, but I think before you get there, we should do one more thing where you're in a position where you're trying out these skills. And that's where she's like, oh, well, my friend Heather.
Environment.
Right. And she's like, my friend Heather Beauchamp is not going to be able to take this trip. You should take this trip. And Bette Davis is like, okay, I'll do that. And then we get this very famous shot. And it's going back to like the first shot in the movie is her dowdy shoes and her dowdy outfit. And then here she's at the ship.
Oh, they're just dreadful shoes, aren't they? They're
I'm
so
sure
bad.
I had a pair. I mean, they're probably really comfortable if you have to wear them all day.
They probably are. That's true.
No, they're not great. They're not flattering. And then she's in the most like chic pumps. You know, she's spectator shoes, and she's in this gorgeous outfit with
suit. The suit
is divine.
The hat, the whole. Oh, it is perfection.
And her skin and her eyes.
Her skin is glowing. Her hair, there's not a hair out of place. And yet, you can see in her eyes.
She's terrified.
She's scared. She's so scared. She looks gorgeous. And everyone is wowed. And she is terrified. And because she's Bette Davis and she just can act her booty off. And
she certainly can.
Oh gosh.
This was my first view. I don't know if we mentioned this. This was my first view watching this movie, and I was crying my eyes out. It's the perfect movie for like curling up on a couch with some blankies and just.
Oh yes.
Some
and just watch now Voyager. So again, it's as we mentioned a moment ago. Europe is on fire, so we're not going to be able to. Not only can we not shoot in Europe, we can't even pretend to be shooting in Europe. Like that's how bad things are over there. And also during the war, America had this thing called the good neighbor policy, where, you know, for a very brief time, we celebrated Central and South American culture. And there was a lot of films and a lot of propaganda to say like, oh, look how wonderful it is. And these are our neighbors. And, you know, we have this shared relationship and we need to look out for each other. I know it's hard to wrap your head around now. So they changed the location of the cruise. It is now a South American cruise, which again, it would have been for someone who was in her position at that time. So we just transplant the European cruise to now be a South American cruise. All of the players are the same. We've got the McIntyres, these friends of Jerry's who are also on the ship. We've got Jerry, same deal, like he's traveling for business, just for a leg of the trip. The only thing that we forgot to change is Giuseppe, the driver, who is in Rio but speaks Italian.
Yeah, I have cousins that were raised in Brazil. Just they worked for a Ford plant there, and when they would come to visit every other year, they'd come for a month, and they all spoke Portuguese, and they would make fun of all of us, and we couldn't figure out what they were saying. So I know that accent,
so weird.
And because it's kind of Frenchish and kind of Spanish, but it's also
the Portuguese.
Portuguese.
It's a very difficult. Like I meant, it's so weird that they have Giuseppe. Not that Portuguese is weird.
Right.
Portuguese, I think, is one of the most beautiful languages.
Oh, it is.
It's so beautiful. But as someone who speaks Spanish, like it is unintelligible. I really cannot understand it. Which is okay. So in the movie, so now they've got this driver, and this whole scene is in the book, except we're in Italy. We're not in Brazil. And they bemoan because they can't communicate with the driver. They bemoan that we didn't bring one of the Portuguese-speaking people from the ship with us. Well, he's not speaking Portuguese. He's speaking French. He's an Italian. No, it's a I don't know what it is because I do speak Italian.
I think
he's an Italian or an Italian American. He's of Italian descent. This actor is
right.
So he's like it's just like what Sid Caesar used to do.
It's gobbledygook.
It's all over the place.
All these different languages. So they're in a car. They're in a taxi. He's driving them, and then the car falls off the side of the road, and he's like a Mamma Mia and Santa God. And he's mixing up all these languages.
So strange.
It's very odd.
Giuseppe, go and get another automobile and chauffeur. Signorina must go Rio immediately. Catch big boat. Giuseppe, stay here when Signor and Signorina go Rio. Then, Giuseppe, get cavallo e corda and come Rio later. Comprehendere?
Jerry, haven't you got a piece of paper? Draw it out for him.
Right.
What's the word for tonight?
Draw the face of a clock.
Oh, yeah. Tonight.
Esta noite.
Esta noite. Esta noite. Big boat. Go. Depart. Shh.
Intendo.
Esta noite.
Intendo. Voy a buscar automóvil e volto già. Goodbye, señorita y señor. Automóvil, quiero automóvil. Va, intendo, ¿cómo no? Automóvil, qué desgracia.
And she's in a gorgeous jacket coat that she wears that's so beautiful. I'm like looking at the coat.
Again, there is not a single garment on this film.
That's by accident. It's all meant to.
No,
but
so good.
But they're trying to like say to the guy, "Go get us help." Or Paul Henreid's like, "You stay here with her. I'll go get help." But Giuseppe's like, "No," and it goes on and on and on. It's a little too long. But
it's quite long.
Then he says, "I'm gonna go and get help. See you later." And we don't know if he's coming back or not. But eventually, they do find their way back to the States, and they decide that they can't have their relationship move forward. He's married. He's got the kids. And so they're going to, they had what they had and they're going to move on with their lives. And so she comes back home and she's Bette Davis coming back home and she sees her mother and her mother's in the all white outfit.
The mother's in the all white outfit. Bette Davis is in this striking, dramatic, show-stopping suit with the clutch, that giant patent clutch that she's got, and the hat. It's
beyond.
It's so pretty. It's so pretty.
Who is the? It's Orly. It's
Ori Kelly.
Ori Kelly does all the fashions here, and it's just spectacular. And she's saying to her mother, like, "Hey, what do you think?" And she's looking at her, and she's not happy. She's
like, put your glasses back on, put your other shoes back on, walk up and down, let me see what you look like. And she's literally ordering her. This is in the book too. She's like, it's like, sit down, walk over there, do this, pick up that. And she immediately starts ordering Charlotte about. And Charlotte's like, whoa, hello to you.
Yeah,
as well.
Nice to see you too, Mom. Love you too. And she's got company coming over. And so she says to Charlotte, put on this, take off that outfit, put on this one. And Charlotte's like, okay. And he says, use your guns, but don't fire. I forget the way that the expression is, but just a good advice. It's, you can't fight everything with people. You're not going to change people. So just have your stuff in order. So Charlotte is like placating her mother enough to talk to her. But she has company coming over. So Charlotte shows up and the company's like, oh my God, Charlotte, you look beautiful. You look so great. And they're all happy for her, but her mother is being a pain in the tuchus, and so Charlotte is sending people up to talk to her, and Charlotte meets with this old beau.
That's when the mother throws herself down the stairs, like right before the whole family is coming over to be like, see what happens when Charlotte goes away. I fell down the stairs. And Charlotte's like, oh, well, I guess you need a nurse then. Good thing she's still here. We'll just get you fixed up right away. They call the doctor. The doctor's like, yeah, it's fine. It'll heal. Like, she's yowling a lot, but it'll be fine. It's, just placate her basically. So the party continues with the brothers who have showed up with their families and their wives and Lisa, the sister-in-law, and they see Charlotte's glow up. And they're really happy for her.
Yeah.
They're for one or two of the stodgier ones are like, I don't really.
It's a little risque,
It's like, a little, yeah.
It's not even. It's like her clavicle. It's not even like cleavage.
Not even. Yeah. Oh yeah. It's not risque at all.
It's not.
But for the most part, like by the end of the evening, she has charmed them all. Like they really see how she's transformed inside and out. And they realize that this is really for the best. This is really the best thing. And so now we know that the family is behind her, which is great.
Yeah. So the family's behind her. her mother is trying to take advantage of her again because now her mother has the broken ankle. Charlotte is dating Elliot Livingston now. Elliot's a widower and has 2 kids. And they had a connection before, and he admits, "Oh my God, I took you for granted. I didn't really see you before, but I realized now I was being a jerk." And they start dating, and they have like a very nice relationship. He respects her. He's dazzled by her. He thinks she'd be a good stepmother, and she's like, "Well, I want kids too." And he's like, "Okay, whatever you want." They go out, and Paul Henreid is there. So Jerry's there with his wife and his family, and he and Charlotte wind up sitting next to one another, and it's heartbreaking because they love each other, but they can't be together, but the spark is there.
This whole scene is in the book where they say the audible line and the mumbled line, and the audible line and the mumbled line. And it's heartbreaking in the book. It's twice as heartbreaking when it's Bette Davis.
Right.
And what's his name?
Paul Henreid.
I suddenly blanked. Paul Henreid. They really have great chemistry, I feel like. My only thing about it was like I in the past, before I've read the book, I did think like, Houston can be like, is he completely on the up and up? I wasn't entirely sure. But you eventually, at this point in the movie, you realize, oh no, he's got it bad. And but too bad, because
she's got Livingston, and she's
got Livingston,
and she's being very practical. She's being very practical. Like, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be just like, oh, we'll hold hands and run off into the sunset and it's going to be easy. It's not. So she's pushing back a bit. She and Livingston have a real conversation about where they want to live and how they want to move on. And she realizes we're not compatible. Like, we're just not going to, we like each other very much, but it's not a love match.
And it's a very respectful conversation.
Lovely.
Like, they really,
they're friends. They like each other. I mean, they're going to stay friends. Yeah, I don't know. This therapy she got, really, boy, does it work?
Yeah.
Can I get a session?
Can I have Dr. Jackwith, please? Paging Dr. Jackwith.
I'll go to Vermont. I love Vermont.
Do you believe in immortality?
I don't know. Do you?
I want to believe that there's a chance for such happiness to be carried on somehow, somewhere.
Are you so happy then?
Close to it. Getting warmer and warmer, as we used to say as kids. Remember?
Look out or you'll get burned, we used to say.
Are you afraid of getting burned if you get too close to happiness?
Mercy, no. I'm immune to happiness and therefore to burns.
You weren't immune that night on the mountain.
Do you call that happiness?
Only a small part. There are other kinds.
Such as?
Having fun together. Getting a kick out of simple little things. Out of beauty like this. Sharing confidences we wouldn't share with anybody else in all the world. Charlotte, won't you be honest and tell me that you are happy too? Since the night on the boat when you told me about your illness, I can't get you out of my mind. Not out of my heart either. If I were free, there would be only one thing I want to do. Prove you're not immune to happiness. Would you want me to prove it, Charlotte? Tell me you would. Then I'll go. My darling, you are crying.
Oh, I'm such a fool. Such an old fool. These are only tears of gratitude. An old maid's gratitude for the crumbs offered.
Don't talk like that.
You see, no one ever called me darling before. Let me go.
Those scenes, by the way, are shot at Lake Arrowhead and Big Bear Lake in California.
Yes, I was going to say that. That's Margaret's favorite place.
We vacation there a lot, and it still looks a lot like that. Yeah, it's beautiful there. Yeah, I just was very impressed because they realize they're still part of Boston society. They're still going to have to see each other all the time.
Right. So let's not make this weird.
Yeah. So let's not make this weird. And so it's really,
but it's nice.
Impressive. Yeah.
There's no ghosting.
Good.
They're being adults, and we had a thing. It's not going to work out ultimately, but I'll always respect you. We'll be great friends. And so we'll always look fondly on this time.
So she goes to the mother, who the whole time is doing everything in her power to keep her from getting married. And she tells her, oh, I'm not going to get married. And the mother's like, what?
Because that was her escape hatch, too. Getting married, like getting away from her mother. But then she and her mother have an argument. And she's like, and her mother, because her mother wants to double down on keeping her home and being worse to her. But then she just dies. And Charlotte feels terrible, and Charlotte inherits everything. And then Charlotte is kind of overwhelmed again. And so she goes back to the hospital, and that's where she notices Tina. And it's a great, she takes Tina. Their scenes, like Margot said, their scenes together are so heartwarming. Really I have so much compassion for both those characters. I love them. I care about them. I'm glad they have each other. I think it's really nice. There's a part where she's going to take her camping for a week. And so she has Tina call her dad, and she's saying to her dad, like, Dad, I got this lady I'm going to hang out with. And she's like my friend, and she really cares. And she knows that's her boyfriend that's on that line, and she can't tell him, and she doesn't want him to know that she's with his daughter. He eventually figures out like what's going on. I mean, she helps take care of Tina, and then there's a whole big, Tina gets a glow up as well, and she gets reunited with her dad. And then he's like, how about you and me? Would it be you and me? What, let's make this work for us now. And her whole thing is like, let's take it day by day.
Yeah.
Let's put the brakes. Let's just enjoy
Kid
things.
comes first. She's the most important one here.
Right.
Yeah.
And then they just decide, oh, Jerry, let's ask for the moon. We have the stars, which is a great attitude.
I know.
I think that's a fabulous attitude, and I'm going to use that in my life.
Come on, mental health.
Yes, I'm like, I don't have the moon right now, but I have some stars. That's how I'm going to approach things. And damn it, I cried. The music is so great. Max Steiner does the movie.
It's now, just to be warned, like, again,
a lot of music.
It's so melodramatic.
Right.
But just get into it. Just get into it. You will not be sorry. It's again, at the height of the war, people are very emotional.
Yes.
Their loved ones are being sent away and into a very scary situation. And
they didn't know how long it was going to be.
Heightened time. Yeah. And so to have this sweeping, romantic, and yet like groundbreakingly healthy story going on. It's just like Margot said, just like curl up with a blanket.
Yeah.
Just get into it. Just get into now Voyager. You will not be sorry. And you will enjoy the book.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. I really enjoyed this book. I really enjoyed this movie. I really enjoyed this world. And it was a huge hit, and I get it.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
I mean, it's the clothes.
Of course it was. I mean, come on.
It's Bette Davis and just so good. So believable.
So good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really, really loved it. I know, like I said, it's lauded. It's something that always shows up on like best of lists. But
weepy movies.
They're weepers. But I really feel like we're missing the boat on the whole mental health journey of Charlotte here. Yeah. I don't feel like we talk about that enough.
No.
We're all dazzled by all the other stuff, but she makes good choices.
Yeah, TCM, TCM had a night where they had this, and then they had the Barbara Streisand movie, The Prince of Tides. I think people have asked us to cover that.
Oh, yeah.
But they were just talking about how mental health is talked about in films, and this is an example of it. And I think this is great therapy. I mean, we used to have sanitariums. The federal government was like actually putting money into it. It was something John F. Kennedy wanted. And then Reagan was like, nope. Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But this place, all of it. It's just, I loved learning about this. And I was texting Margot last night. It's like, this is my first watch and I'm crying. And it just all the feels.
It's just, everything is so well thought out in this film, and it's gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous. The only clunker is Giuseppe, and
yeah, and that's not
he's
huge.
hardly there.
It's
not huge at all.
Yeah, her coat makes up for it.
And
for me.
actually, in retrospect, I'm giving Giuseppe a rethink right here. I think it's kind of better that we have a Giuseppe who's speaking gobbledygook than have him be a specific ethnicity that they're making fun of, which they kind of are in the book. And
they needed a little levity too. We kind of needed a little bit of a, especially because they almost died in a car crash. So maybe we just needed some silliness. True. That could be there too. But yeah, it's just odd because I'm trying to figure out what he's saying and he's mixing up all these languages and it's a little, but anyway, it is what it is. It is what it is, and it's fine. It's great. It's still a fabulous movie. I'll definitely be watching this again. And I got the audiobook. I'm going to keep it with me. It's on Kindle Unlimited right now. You can get it at your library. I saw it on Libby app. So definitely, if you get a chance. And Margot, I can't pick one. I like them both.
I know they're both super, super good. I really appreciate. I really enjoyed the book so much, and I love the way that the story is told in the book and the sequence that it's told and all of that. And I like the extra, like I love getting that whole story about Charlotte and the sailor, or whatever he was, the shipman guy. And but I really appreciate the way they decided to present the story in the movie, because there is that visual of her, big reveal, and it's such a big reveal. It's
a special effect.
Yeah,
it really is
so awesome. Yeah, so I'm going to also give it a tie. I'm so glad that we finally did something by this author, because I was missing out.
Yeah, same.
Let's talk about what we're doing next.
So in September, we like to talk about banned books. So we make a month in September for banned books. And we decided, there was Christina, who's just signed up for Patreon, listened to our To Kill a Mockingbird episode. And I thought, we recorded that so long ago in old recording ways. Why don't we talk about that? Because there's a lot of stories about book banning. And unfortunately, it's a book that's still being banned. Why? I have no idea. But I'd love to talk about it again. So we're going to cover To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. And we're going to see the movie with Gregory Peck and Robert Duvall. And it's going to be great.
Cannot wait. I'm very, very excited. Yeah. It's one of those books. It was chosen for the Great American Read, as was Charlotte's Web. But it's one of those American books. It's a uniquely American book that you kind of need to, I feel like as an American, you kind of need to go back and look at it again every few years with a new perspective, with a new lens. And it kind of yields different nuggets of wisdom to us, like every time we look at it again. Very excited to talk about that. So Marco, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me at Brooklyn Margot. That's where, on TikTok, by the way, where I have a bunch of clips from the movie that I'll be posting there. So follow me there. Also on Twitter, Brooklyn Margot. And then I am at Brooklyn Fitchick for Threads and Instagram. Margot, where can they find you?
You can find me online at coloniabook.com, and all my social media callouts are at She's Nacho Mama.
Once again, our email is bookversusmoviepodcast, spelled it all out, at gmail.com. Let us know your ideas we have banned books, we have scary books coming up for October, we have holiday coming up. We're always looking for suggestions, magazine articles, plays, songs, anything that was turned into a movie. Give us your suggestions. Just make sure it's something we can actually get our hands on. Okay, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back soon with a new episode.
May I sometimes come here?
Whenever you like. It's your home, too. There are people here who love you.
They look at you and Tina and share with you peace and contentment.
Of course. And just think it won't be for this time only. That is, if you will help me keep what we have. If we both try hard to protect that little strip of territory that's ours. We can talk about your child.
Our child.
Thank you.
And will you be happy, Charlotte?
Oh, Jerry, don't let's ask for the moon. We have the stars.
Thank you so much for listening to the Book versus Movie podcast. We're a part of the Frolic Podcast Network. You could find more podcasts you will love at frolic.media/podcasts. You could find us on Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, and Instagram at Book versus a Movie. Just spelled it all out. We have a Patreon page. Type in there Book vs. Movie Podcast, where you can find 8 years worth of shows. You can follow Margot D on social media at Brooklyn Margot and also Brooklyn Fit Chick. You can find Margot P at She's Nacho Mama. Thank you again for listening, and please be sure to send along your suggestions for the show. Remember, the book needs to be easy to get your hands on, and the movie has to be streaming on a major platform. We will be back soon with a new episode.